Thanks for listening to Fluff and Crunch, where we talk about the connection and sometimes disconnect between system, setting, and story in tabletop RPGs. All right, there we are. We are recording. Hello, Chris. It's been a couple weeks since we've talked.
Hi, Jeremy. It has, because, reasons.
Because life and stuff and things like that.
Yep.
So on the gaming front, what's new? What's new for you?
I think, because like I said, it's been a few weeks. I think I've played a session of D&D since. I think it might have been the last time we recorded. Because then I've had a week where we didn't and another week where we didn't. But I think the last week we did meet was afterwards. So we carried on with our D&D thing, and I went back to playing with me running and Brian and Scott using their characters. And it was quite funny because this links to something we talked about. When I did the first session, I used a proper cliche trope of an old wizard walks into the bar and offers them a quest, and they didn't question it, they just went ahead with it. So then this time I kind of turned that around by having like the guy that's stolen off in that one turn up and go like, you stole my stuff, and he went like, look, that's fine, because like you fought your way through the dungeon, like, and it was set up to kill you and you didn't die, so yeah, I can't complain. He said, but you do realize the guy that you stole for was actually a bad guy, and like he works for the Empire and I work against the Empire, so you're fighting for the bad guys. And they were like, oh no, because like, we're setting up this whole thing of there's like an evil empire and all the characters are anti it. And they went, oh no, oh yeah, we didn't think to like look into the background of this bloke. So this guy was like, all right, well, I want you to go and do this thing. So I talked about this thing called a living dungeon with a dungeon hut in it or something. So they went off with this totally dodgy looking, I mean, like alarm bell should have been ringing straight away, because the guy I sent with them was just looked bad. It was like this like orc assassin, and he just looked straight up like, this guy is no good. I think they thought I was just going to kill him off again. Anyways, they fought their way through Dungeon and bunch and other things. I actually used this. I did a Kickstarter called Dungeon Alchemist a while ago, where it's like a 3D map maker where you can like draw out little boxes and stuff, but then you can drop a camera into it. So I was able to like, I had a top view map that I could use, but then I was able to I took screenshots of like when they go into a room, what the rooms look like, so I could then show that. So that was really cool, because then it meant like they had a better idea of what everything looked like. And they fought their way through that and then got to the end. And then sure enough, at the end, the other guy like tried to betray it, except the other guy had taken a proper kick in about 2 rooms before and had like no health left. So he didn't do a very good job of trying to betray them. So they got out with this thing, and then I just had the wizard like turn up in the night and just like time stop them and just go like, I'm taking this, going, ha ha, I worked for the Empire all along. And just disappeared. And they were like, oh yeah, we didn't look into this guy either. It's like, suckers. So I felt very proud of myself that I like made them convinced that the guy they were going to work for this time was the good guy and the other guy was the bad guy. And in fact, it was the other way around all along.
Twists are good. Twists like that are good.
And they were, oh, it was really railroad. And it was like, yeah, but you kept doing what I said, so I went with it.
Don't blame me.
So now I'm gonna, yeah. So it was hilarious. So I thought that was fun. And today, hopefully, not today, tomorrow, Scott is actually meant to be running a session, and I don't think Scott's run a role playing session since like we were kids. He ran Rifts, so
that's cool.
30 years.
Good.
How about you?
We have been. We had I think a week or so. Might have been 2. I don't know. We had some times when we couldn't meet. Our group couldn't get together, but we've still been playing I have been playing in a 5e game that one of the other people in my group has been running. So we're now a couple of sessions in. We've moved from the initial, like, let's make the story get started site to the location of the first main story, done some things there, and now we're prepared to move out to somewhere else. And to the excitement of the other players, our characters made 2nd level.
We just start at 3rd. So
well, a lot of people do, but
starting at. Let's go. You carry on.
Yeah, no, starting at 3rd. Yeah, no, I mean, you with the archetype and all that, it tends to give the character, there's a little more to it, and then you're not treating those initial sessions as like, okay, that's just a means to an end. Let me get to the part where my character's interesting and can do the things I wanted to do. But it's been fun. It's been fun. I've been, I don't know why, but it seems like minis and fantasy games are like peanut butter and chocolate, whereas like minis and science fiction games is less so. And it may be because of the availability of fantasy minis and my greater familiarity and admittedly low but still skill in making terrain and buildings and junk like that. It's easier to make a brick building or a tumble
Yeah.
down stone wall than it is to make you know, I don't know, a starbase or something that looks all futury and whatnot. So I don't know what it is. Maybe that's just me, but it seems like when I think minis and games, I think the perfect pairing is minis and fantasy games. So we've been doing that, which means that we've been getting to use the LED lights and stuff like that
Ooh.
on the gaming table that I built so that we have mood lighting. So it's been fun. It's been good.
I see, because having to make characters fight, because obviously I've run 5e like a lot, well, not
Yep.
a lot compared to compared to what most people run it, not a lot, but I've run 5e a bunch of different times. And I was always fine as a GM. So from a player side, oh god, I want to be playing Pathfinder, because I'm literally sitting there going, right, which class do I want? But even if I go, okay, I have this class and this class has this many subclasses, I don't like any of those subclasses.
Yeah.
I want to use an official one, because then I can use the PDFs I have, which auto generate a lot of the stuff. Whereas if I use some homebrew, well, for a start, it could be horribly unbalanced. And I know we said balance doesn't matter, but then there's you never know when something's
Yeah,
going
but
to
that's
be
an
gone.
assumption that a lot of people at a 5e table make, that it will be whatever that's supposed to mean. So if something's really
Yeah.
broken, that's a
So
problem.
at least we don't want something to be horribly broken. So we stick to the proper stuff. But then it's this thing like, oh, the characters just can't, I have a picture in my head, but I can't get a character that matches the picture in my head. And last time, I got around that by having a character with a split personality that switched between being a barbarian and a fighter, because I couldn't decide what to. And I don't like the multi-classing rules, because if you multi-class, it means that you don't get your extra attack for a whole extra level and stuff like that. And then this time I was you're trying to decide. I knew I was having a caster, and I've spent a week trying to decide between a warlock, a sorcerer, or a wizard, because they're quite different, but none of them quite, and they all had flaws. Whereas I know, if I just play Pathfinder, I could just pick one and then take the feats I want to make the character the way I want it to be, because that's how you can build a character in Pathfinder. Which is
Yeah,
I was
I have found myself. It's been fun. The story's been fun, been interesting. The characters, it just takes time. You can't make new characters and all of a sudden they function as a group and as a story, and you don't even really know what they are. But I do find myself the mechanics of 5e are just so not to my liking. But whatever.
Pathfinder mechanically works the mechanics wouldn't be any different, but it's things like I know if I played Pathfinder, I have so many more options to build a character how I want it to be built. In actual play, it'd be super similar. And then there's things I know I won't like the stats going up every single level, getting to silly numbers very quickly.
No thanks.
Which would bug me. So that's not my perfect. I just know in character creation, it's just I feel so shoehorned into
you've definitely got more options the other way.
I have to pick this subclass at level, and then that's it. My character is now decided for the next 17 levels now, other than I get to pick a feat or what spells I have, and that's about it. You get so little character choice. Can't be doing this. And so I worked it out, and I have enjoyed playing, and I've enjoyed running it. So that's the main thing.
Good.
That's not what we're doing today.
No, it's not what we're doing today. What we're going to do today is your idea, which I think is a good idea and launches a new, call it category or template for an episode. So why don't you take a second and explain that, and then we will dive into it.
So did I put lamented? Often in our reviews of comics, we have lamented. That was a great word. That we've come across certain role-playing games, some 2D20 and some not, where we felt that my biggest criticism is usually me saying that the game doesn't give a very good idea to the GM of what are the players going to do. So I know I've said this. I said this would be an issue in Acton Cthulhu, except it's obvious because it's World War II and Cthulhu. So they don't need to tell you what to do because it's easy. You shoot Nazis or Cthulhu monsters. So it's that's easy. I think I said this about Dishonored I wasn't clear on, and Dune, and Homeworld especially. but when then we've said it about other games, so like I think someone had asked in another forum or somewhere I read someone said, well, what about Dragon Prince? What do you do in that? And I was like, really, it's not super clear. And because the world is mostly this cartoon, which follows a very narrow group of characters, it's super unclear what you do beyond that. So having made that criticism a lot, I thought, well, what would be useful then is to have a series of episodes where we actually pick either games. So some of the ones I mentioned, we might do sessions on them, or actually just genres for, if you're an experienced GM and you've played everything under the sun, nothing here is going to be world breaking. But if you're maybe a newer GM or someone who hasn't GM'd before, or you're moving into a game you haven't played before because you only ever played D&D, then what we're planning to do is give you some ideas. Go, so here's this genre, or here's this game, here's a bunch of things you can use as a plot idea or a story idea, adventure idea, however you want to look at it, that you can take and then hopefully build on that and do something with it. Because some systems are great at this. Like the initial 2D20 games in the GM screen had like random mission builders.
Yeah, Conan has a great adventure builder in it.
Mutant Chronicles, I think, did, but still didn't make any sense. So I still didn't. There was like a lot of Savage World games have like random mission generator, which I just love, because even if you're never going to use it as a random mission generator, it gives you an idea of what could be happening.
Or it becomes, I've tended to use those things if I've used them as, call them like random inspiration generators.
Yeah.
They just give you things to think about. You roll a couple of variables and then you're like, well, what would a, let's see, broken down old drunken wizard, a secret cave, whatever. I mean, what would those things, how would they connect to one another? And you start to think. So so we're gonna start this off, and you wanted to look at sci-fi as a genre.
Yes.
As a genre. And I know you're not a fan of core rule books with sample adventures taking up page count in them, but I agree though that there are plenty of games, there are plenty of properties where it's really obvious. I think your point on Achtung Cthulhu is spot on. Like if you read the player's guide and the GM's guide and you're like, I have no idea what I would run here. Like I don't know what to do, because again, it's so obvious. I think that there are plenty of games, like even like Star Wars to an extent. There are assumptions about what you would do, but in general,
I think Star Wars. I was going to say, I think Star Wars versus Star Trek, because if you don't know what to do in a Star Trek game, just go and watch a bunch of episodes, because they're all different.
Sure,
but actually, Star Wars, I think, is an example of, it's not clear what you could do, because Star Wars follows a very tight story. Star Wars is the Skywalker saga, and if you step outside the Skywalker saga, I think it is a bit less unclear of what could you do now.
I think that's where
but done a good job of telling.
Fantasy Flight tried to address that by releasing Edge of the Empire first and introducing this backdrop of like scoundrels and villainy and crime and stuff like that. But so we're going to talk about sci-fi as a genre, and what are some good ways, what do we think at least, maybe some story ideas. And some of them will come across as cliched, I'm sure, and maybe some of them won't. And that's fine. I mean, sometimes the cliches are actually okay. I think it depends on how they're delivered. So what would you consider to be the A-list? You're moving to, you're going to run a sci-fi game. Doesn't matter. But what's the A-list of like the low-hanging fruit, that is, the most obvious, maybe not obvious, but like the most, the story seeds that would be most readily accessible and easy to put to use by a GM. Like someone is like, I've played D&D and now I'm blue in the face about this. I'm going to go play a sci-fi game. I'm going to go play Traveler, or I'm going to go play The Expanse or something like that, or whatever. What could be, what's something?
I think let's assume that we've ship, because I think that makes it massive.
Wait.
And then we can do a different.
Say that over again, because your sound went blah, 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 blah.
That you've got a spaceship. Let's assume that you've got a spaceship, because I think we can do a separate thing for like, cyberpunk or that kind of thing, where, because I think it makes it very different. You could do a whole separate one on cyberpunk and Shadow.
Actually, let's do this. Let's specify it a little bit more. Let's say this is a sci-fi setting in which the characters either have or have immediate access to a ship that enables them to move from place to place in space, either within a limited area like a star system, or across the galaxy. but there's this movement element, and you have the means by which to go from A to B to C. So
Yeah.
there's our backdrop.
So I'll give two of the most obvious ones
Do it.
because then we can decide what to pick. I think one of these is an in media, whereas one where you are flying A to B and there's a distress call.
Totally.
Yeah, well, let's go with that because that which is classic. That's the plot of Alien.
Yeah,
One of the
that's a
greatest
good point.
sci-fi films
From a
ever
perspective.
made.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
And
happened.
how many
There's a
Star Trek
distress.
episodes start with that?
Yeah.
How many
And that's also
How many Clone Wars episodes start with something like that? You hear the music, and there's the quote, and then
that's also how The Expanse starts as well. The
oh
Expanse,
wow,
essentially, the thing that sends them all off, and then all of the books and the series, everything else, is when the
wow,
begins with C. I think it's,
the Canterbury,
thank you. I was like, I know
Canterbury.
it's got a
Remember the cant?
church. It is a place in England.
Yes, it is.
The Canterbury gets a distress call, and oh no, why am I blanking all the character
Holden.
names? Thank you.
Yep.
Holden does his whole like, I'm not really a hero, but he is really. He's like a proper hero, but he's a properly reluctant. I'm going to do the good thing, and then of course and then
he kills.
Not going to
everybody
stay.
dies. Yeah.
If you haven't seen The Expanse, if you haven't seen The Expanse, go and watch it. It took me a while. Like the first time I tried, I bounced straight off it, and then the second time I got super absorbed. And you can now go and watch like all 5 series or 6 series, whatever there was, because then there's going to be a time jump.
Yeah.
And just going, what is the Expanse is amazing, but that starts with a distress
Yeah,
call.
that's a good point. And a lot of Star Trek episodes, like we said, tons of them.
Yeah. Now, what happens when you read the distress call? Then obviously there's loads of different things. It could just generally, it could be someone who needs the help. People hijack your ship. There's alien style. There's bad stuff there. Everybody's dead. But that's it's a nice, easy way to just start with something. And you don't have to worry too much about, people accepting. And one of the biggest problems you have in sci-fi is that a lot of the time you have that sort of that haggle at the beginning. Someone asks you, how much money are we going to get for this?
Yeah.
What's in this for us? The distress call, you can get around that a bit easier because it's like, throw it out there. Obviously, the downside of a distress call that starts your mission is when the players go, nah.
Right. Well, I think what you've got to do is, as GM in that situation, is either, if you're going to use the distress signal, it has to be either in a context where they're required to, or that you seed it with something that it's obvious. And the other thing too, I think especially for a first adventure, like you have picked a new game, or you've come to a new game, you have made characters, you've had your session 0 or whatever, you are playing your first session. I don't think there's anything wrong as a GM to say to the players, okay, this is the 3-word summary of this adventure. I think it's inconsiderate. I think it's actually disrespectful of the time that a GM puts in for you to start off fresh. And there's a difference between that and like, we've been playing this for 3 months and we're 10 sessions in or something like that. That's different. But you're starting fresh and you put out the hook and everyone's like, no, we're going to go do this other navel gazing crap. Like, that's actually really uncool and disrespectful as players. So if you're a player and your GM throws the hook at you in the first adventure, just make your life easy and just take it. So
don't worry about what happened to the crew of the Nostromo and Alien. Just that might not happen to you. It could be a good thing.
You could work out.
Some of you might survive.
So I think that the distress signal, I think you can take, in general, you could take one of 2 ways. You could play it straight. There's nothing wrong with playing it straight. There is a distress signal. It is a genuine problem. These are people who are in need of help, and you go either have to investigate or confront. You snoop around and you try to figure out why this distress signal took place or what's going on, or you get there and there is something to confront to save the underdog. And I think that's perfectly fine. Not everything has to be cloaked in, morally gray, this, that, or what. But the other side is you could throw a twist and have it be like, for example, there's an episode of Strange New Worlds where there is a distress signal and it turns out to be not quite what it seemed to be. There's one that involves a request for help that's actually attached to a distress signal that turns out to be not what. Yeah, you got both. that there's a twist where it, like you were talking about with your 5e campaign, it's not what you think it is. So I think you could take that one of two ways. It's perfectly fine to play it straight, and if you want to twist it around and say that this thing is not in distress or it's a trap of some sort, go for it. What was your other one?
Um, the other one are kind of linked to the if you play the first one straight, actually, the kind of a mission to literally transport something from point A to point B.
Hmm.
So whether that is cargo or whether that is a person. And again, you can play that straight. So if one of my favorite examples of that is Firefly, because actually the original
Yep.
kind of thing of Firefly is that, you know, this brother wants him to transport this sister from one to, and for some
Yeah.
reason they stay on the ship and become part of the crew. But that's how it started. And then it, you know, spins off into the whole, oh yeah, by the way, she's some like scary, crazy assassin person with
Yep.
superpowers, which they then did a whole film about. Or, you know, the classic, yeah, carrying, you know, a box. Here's a box. Don't look in the box. We just want you to take it from A to B.
Yep.
Don't accidentally look in the back of the car and blow someone's head off carrying it. So now it goes Pulp Fiction, because that's the one of the main stories in Pulp Fiction is essentially carrying
It's a good point.
something
So
from A to
then,
B.
what are ways? So you got to either play it straight. Play it straight. What are, if you were to play that straight, either transporting individuals or stuff, which could be cargo or maybe information. What is a way that you would complicate it? Because obviously the distress call is pretty obvious. What are ways that you would complicate that? The call it the delivery mission.
Yeah,
Complicate that and
I
make it
think
challenging by playing it and play it straight.
I think it's usually like something's going to go wrong. Now, whether it's cargo person, it's kind of, does it go wrong en route because the thing in the box breaks out, and
Right.
it is a thing, and then it's going to kill everyone on board, or the person's infected with something. So that's when it goes off, because actually the thing you're carrying, something happens en route, which makes it difficult, and then that starts off everything. Alternatively, there is someone else who wants it and they come and get it en route. So, you know, you could get hijacked or stopped. And again, that could be anything from pirates to the person that it belongs to the government, because you've got to run a blockade. And, you know, there's quite a few different things might be stopped en route. I think the thing is actually you get to where you're going and there isn't a problem. But then when you get to the where you're going, that's when it all goes wrong. So you get there and someone else turns up or to collect, or the person that you're delivering it to isn't there. Or the classic, you turn up and you realize the person that you're handing this person off to, actually it's not a thing. You're doing slavery.
Right.
Yay.
Yeah.
Because most players, especially in this day and age, will balk at that and go, oh no, I'm not comfortable with handing over a
Well, yeah, I
person
would
to
hope.
someone else as a slave. So, and then
Sure hope
then,
not.
then you can go there. Do you stop right there and then? Do you try and rescue them later?
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
I think
yeah, a lot.
if you're going to play the delivery mission straight, I think that you're right. You can throw a challenge on the way that is either directed at the cargo or is incidental to. Like you're moving from star system to star system and pirates attack you and they don't care what you're carrying. They just want to take it. Or it could be someone who's coming after it because they know what it is. Okay. Or you have some kind of complication when they arrive. I would caution though that if you wanted to, if you want to make this a bigger, deeper adventure instead of just like, you know, a three-part, three-act drama kind of thing, if you want to make it more, if you're going to throw a challenge at the party during and you're going to throw a challenge at them when they arrive, I think that you have to make them different in nature. Otherwise, it just becomes like, oh, you know, like you're like a teacher who says, you know, oh, I really help I have a rigorous class, and that just means they just give more tedious homework. You're like, you're actually not helping people learn more. You're just burying them in crap. So don't like have pirates randomly attack and then have bandits randomly attack at the spaceport. That's just that's a recipe for boredom, I think. But I think, yeah,
Yeah.
playing it straight like that. What about if you were to twist it? You have a delivery mission. What's the twist? I've got one.
Go.
Okay. Uh, is that the mission itself is utterly mundane, but as you brought up, the cargo itself is something. I guess in a way you said this, but like when you were talking about a person, I thought of there's a Star Trek original series episode called Elan of Troyes, And Ilana Troyes is this woman who's being delivered from one planet to another as part of some diplomatic mission that the Enterprise is just facilitating. And she's going to be married off to someone. And she, because of issues related to or innate to her, causes all kinds of problems on the ship, not the least of which she's not interested in getting married. And so that could be a
Does she
complication.
hook up with Kirk?
I can neither confirm nor deny that. Uh, uh, but so you can have the delivery mission be utterly mundane, but that as you said, the twist could be that the thing itself causes problems or challenges on the way. I think that's an easy way to do it. And that could be a thing. That could be cargo. Like maybe the cargo is not an alien that wants to eat everybody. Maybe it's some
Tribbles.
component with like radioactive stuff in it and it breaks and it leaks or something like that.
What? I believe you know what tribbles are. Sorry, Mika standing like a foot over that way. I was
She knows what
surprised that she
tribbles
knows
are.
what.
She better know what
Apparently.
tribbles are.
I did. I was like, yeah. So I haven't watched much. I've watched very few episodes of the original Star Trek, but I know what tribbles are because they do a Deep Space Nine episode
Yes.
where they flash back to it.
Yep. So what do you think? Another what's a way to twist the cargo delivery?
I think with most, and we covered it. I mean, essentially, it's either going to be that when you arrive, it doesn't go the way you did, or the thing you're carrying isn't what you thought it was, right. Or but there's so many different ways you can go with that, particularly when it's a person,
yeah,
or two people. Because if it's the person doesn't want to go where they want to go, or they don't want to do the thing they're being sent to do there, or they're actually a prisoner, or you do other things. It could be you're taking a marshal and his prisoner, and then it turns out that the prisoner's wrongfully accused, and actually the marshal was the bad guy. And
it could be something as simple as something the last before we set Star Trek aside to play this 5e stuff. Recently, the last adventure that I ran, one of the stories within it was kind of a double plot adventure, but one of them involved them ferrying a Federation ambassador to this world, and the mission was really straight. There was actually, it was like they needed to go there and assist him to negotiate like a peace between two factions that were possibly two religious factions that might get into like some kind of a conflict or civil war. Okay, there was absolutely nothing twisty about that. It was totally straight. The complicating factor, aside from them just trying to figure out how to resolve this problem, was that the ambassador was a jerk. I just that was it. The in a way, the cargo, the individual they were carrying, that was part and parcel to the mission, was just difficult, and especially in either a game that favors through its systems and its stated objectives lots of character interplay, or just because you like to have that at your table, just have someone be a jerk, just have someone be difficult. And there's lots of opportunities then for role play within the party.
Yeah, I think it's easier inside because you don't see this as much in travel isn't as okay. Travel sometimes isn't fancy. We have Lord of the Rings where it's basically just a long journey to throw a ring in a volcano, but they did that on foot. But when you're stuck in like a spaceship, and it might be a long journey, and depending on the kind of game, it could be weeks to get from point A to point B. Then it gives you a lot more of time to get to know the people you're traveling with, which then sometimes that could be all that you need. It's just there's a strife, or one of the people on the ship is stealing stuff from the crew, and they're wondering where everything's going missing. And
there was
it doesn't have.
Do you remember that? I think it was a first season Next Generation episode where they had like two diplomatic parties, and like one of them was like a fish. They were fish people. They were really bad costumes, and one of them was like lizard people, and they thought that one of the lizard people ate one of the fish people or something like that. Yeah. The costumes were so bad. Anyway, okay, I like that. You could actually then you use the delivery mission as a hook, but that's actually not the story. That's just the backdrop in which that provides motion or a sense of like accomplishment or moving to accomplish something while the actual story takes place. Okay, I see your next one on here, and it's a good one because it's super tropey. And it's
go on.
Oh, it's you're asked to explore ? Yeah, that's what you got in your email. Totally.
we do this in fantasy all the time, but
Everything.
it'll be if it's fantasy, it's almost like you've been asked to explore a dungeon or a ruin. You've got so much more variety in a sci-fi thing, because it could an unexplored planet.
Hmm.
It could be, we think a ship's gone down,
Yeah.
such and such. So there's
Which is
different
just a
reasons
space
for going there.
dungeon.
Exactly. There's different reasons to be sent to explore. Someone's gone there, we've lost contact, or there was an outpost there, we haven't heard from them, so that's aliens.
Yeah.
We've the setup colony. In fact, that's almost pretty close to one of the Expanse things as well.
Yeah.
Oh, something's going wrong there, we need to go and do it.
Yep.
Or literally go into a planet, we don't know what's there, we think someone's gone down, we need you to go and find out. Or that's your job is to go and explore strange new worlds. So a good chunk
and that could either
Star
be
Trek.
because it's your job, like if you establish the characters as, say, a friend of mine, the one who was the co-host way back when we did that the Twilight 2000 episode, John, he has kicked around the idea of a traveler campaign where the party are essentially like solar system level emergency personnel. You're like the solar system's fire department,
Your Thunderbirds.
Yes, I love the Thunderbirds. I love the Tracys. They're great. Anyway, I love the old ones, and they had the little like the burger joint hats. They were the best. Burger joint hats and like pageant queen sashes. I really hope the future doesn't look like that.
But the most kick-ass technology that we've ever seen in anything.
Not
question.
Going
about anything else. No.
Okay, real quick though,
which Thunderbird 2 and all the cool stuff.
Which is the coolest Thunderbird vehicle?
2.
Okay, that's why we're friends, because that's scientifically proven to be.
It's cheating, because 2 had everything else in it.
I don't care.
2 was amazing. I mean, it was big and slow and a bit, but it just had
cool.
everything else in it. It was amazing.
Okay, so
also it had really good launch.
So the
3 had the best launch.
I'm gonna, if you don't mind, and if you do mind, pick at me. I'm going to expand the definition of it. Go explore something is go somewhere to accomplish something there. Yeah. And it could either be go there to find out information, like go map this planet. It could be, and that could be because you have a patron that sends you. That's easy. Or it's your job, which I think is kind of the same, patron individual or patron organization. It's the same thing. Or there's vested personal interest. And that's when you have, if you have the session 0 and you have players come up with, oh, here's my backstory. I was a such and such. I was a colonial marine or whatever. And you go, okay, well, your buddy that you mustered out with a couple of years ago from the colonial marines, he's on this planet, and you got a message from him from 3 months ago asking for help or something. The motivating force, the hook for that one should be, again, pretty straightforward. But yeah, go to this place and accomplish a thing there. Explore it, secure it, pillage it. That's the space dungeon.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that makes it easier in sci-fi is that a lot of times, like, you might actually genuinely be working for someone. Because the two main motivators are often going to be money. You're broke and you need to maintain your ship, or you work for someone. This is literally your job. Your boss says do this, and you go, okay, well,
you're Starfleet.
Like,
you work for the rebellion.
Often doesn't have that kind of the idea in fantasy is often you're just random adventurers and you're doing stuff for, I don't know, shits and giggles. It's a bit weird. It's just like that's the standard thing in fantasy.
Right. Nobody questions why the murder hobos are doing what they're doing.
But we're also knowing hardly ever do I see an adventure in fantasy where it's right, someone asks you to go to explore this thing, which is funny because in Pathfinder, that's literally why it's called Pathfinder. Right. There's a Pathfinder society. Their job is to map things out and find things out. But that's never what you do in Pathfinder. It's still like dungeons and mysteries and, intrigue and all the same stuff we get in normal fantasy. But that seems like a standard sci-fi thing, right? We want you to go to this planet and see what's there. This planet's gone. That doesn't seem to happen in fantasy. I'll go to this island and map the thing. And I think it's the difference of the technology. We assume in sci-fi that you can go there and press a button and it maps the entire planet. And you can go, oh, we can leave now. It's a class M planet.
That there's a means of getting into places beyond a frontier, and or that there is knowledge, like call it skeletal knowledge of stuff we don't know about that's out there. So, the easiest way, like with Star Trek, it was like, okay, you're on a patrol / exploration duty for these many months in this area. And then it's just like whatever I can throw at you. Yeah, you're right though. The fantasy doesn't have as much of that in terms of it being like your job to go do. But I think that's, yeah, go there and explore the thing or dig through it either for profit or because it's your job or because you're going to assist someone who is there
I
or
think part of
has
the
seen you
reason
there.
that we don't see this in fantasy, we tend to like having a map, and the map tends to have everything on it. Whereas no one in a sci-fi game is of the idea that every single planet that exists
Yeah,
is on a star chart. Everyone just accepts that, well, this is how many planets we know, but there's a ton more. So if you
yeah,
want to make up planets, make up some
yeah,
planets. Whereas no one kind of goes, oh, in D&D, that blank bit there on the map, just stick something there,
yeah,
which is quite funny because it's size-wise for how much you can travel and stuff. It's a similar
yeah.
principle, but
Actually, that's a fascinating
yeah.
point because, and I'm going to hazard a guess as to why that's the case, is that companies, you have people who work for these companies. Like go back to TSR, and publishing the Greyhawk boxed set, and then they publish Forgotten Realms. Like they're all a bunch of creatives, and they're coming up with these ideas, but they're also a company that has to sell stuff. And so the idea of writing adventures is one thing, but creating a world, there's your outlet for your frustrated novelist.
Hmm.
So that's an interesting point that, yeah, nobody questions. I mean, there are maps in you've seen, in the Star Trek books, in the inside covers of like the Alpha and the Beta Quadrant and stuff like that. There's virtually nothing in detail for the Delta Quadrant, and there's virtually nothing for the Gamma Quadrant, but that's because in canon those things are not very well explored. But yeah, there's one game I know of that deliberately says no, we don't do that, and that's Forbidden Lands, which is supposed to be a fantasy hex crawl survival game. And
Yeah,
so you
yeah,
start off knowing bupkis about what is out there beyond like a stone's throw of your home, and that's intentional. And then there's Mutant Year Zero, which is the
yeah,
same thing
similar.
basically. you know, uh, Twilight 2000 offers that to a degree, although you would have knowledge of what was there, but you have no idea what its current state is because of the war. Um, but yeah, I think the
Yeah,
idea
it's
of
funny.
going out and like mapping and finding new and exploring for sci-fi, that fits perfectly.
It's funny thinking about this because although I said we're talking about a ship that in the I know I've forgotten the thing.
It'll come
What's
back
the
to you.
really transhuman thing? Oh, in Eclipse phase, that's one of the main sets of adventuring. Is the idea there's like gates that you go through, and the gates can be like Star Trek, not
Yeah,
Star Trek, Star Gates, dialed up to go to different things, and then you go through, and there's a world there, and you're meant to explore it. So that's literally one of the ideas
that's a
there. So
really
it's
good
very
point.
similar thing.
That's a really good point. I'm just as I'm stewing over this in my head is that, yeah, they're always outliers, but you just don't. There isn't a whole lot of fantasy. There aren't a whole lot of fantasy stories where the idea is like we don't know what's over there. Like we don't know if, okay, there's mountains and we actually don't know reliably what is on the other side of them. There's always
Yeah,
the big poster world map which then sketches out everything, at least from a top level. And sci-fi
I
has
think
less of that. That's a good point.
yeah, I think one exception to that, the Kingmaker campaign part,
Yeah,
that is actually what you had to do there. They said we want you to go to the
ran it.
border kingdoms and see what's there.
Yeah,
So that it has been done, but it's super rare
yeah,
compared to look. Yeah, despite the fact that we don't have the technology to do this, we know there's this dungeon there. We're not explaining how they done, but go and explore the dungeon, or go and explore this thing, or go to the. I think everything's already mapped out.
yeah,
I like our maps in during that in Renaissance. Let's say whether we go medieval or Renaissance time period. Our maps of all of that at that time were terrible.
yeah,
We know they were terrible because that's how Christopher Columbus ended up in the Caribbean, and he
yeah,
thought he was in India.
yeah.
That's how bad. And yet, for some reason, in fantasy games, we assume that all the maps are spot on. Like
That's
the
a
map
really
of
good point.
Forgotten
Like who
Realms. The map of the Forgotten Realms is super detailed.
I
It goes all
know
the way
who are the
down through,
badass cartographers who have
all of the
gone out and done
Arabian stuff
this
and all
fine
over to
work.
there. And yeah,
Oh,
they threw in another continent because they did like Mazteca, which was sort of Southern America, South America, and they just threw that continent in there and did a similar thing. But still, everything else is like, oh, it's totally well mapped out, and you think, well, clearly, there's no way that anyone on that planet has the maps that good, unless Elminster's just sitting there pressing a button on his
stop! Don't
magic
bring him
printer
up.
that's
So
producing them.
okay, so exploration, exploration, and you could play it straight. There's something to be found at this place, or something to be learned that is of value, which then the good GM will use as a lead into the next thing, the next story.
Yeah.
Or give or find some way to have things there that are of interest to the characters because of how the players made them. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know what kind of a twist. I guess if a patron sent you to go explore and they're just trying to get rid of you, like you ticked off your boss, and so your boss just wants you dead. I guess
I
you
think
could do
you can do
something
like
that.
you do Lost in Space. When you get
Hmm.
there, your ship breaks.
Oh yeah,
Now stuck. So now,
but
you
don't
do you
here's
have
the
to
thing.
explore, but also you can't leave.
But don't do that, GMs. Don't do that to your players unless they know that's coming.
Yeah.
I think, because if everyone's like, yeah, that's really cool, we're going to play, Traveler, and we're going to move from system to system and get involved in adventures and trade stuff. And then in the first adventure, you're like, yeah, your ship breaks and you're stuck on a tech level 5 world.
Yeah.
Pick up a sword. Let's play D&D without magic. And you're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
not
The,
what I
the guy
signed
that's
on
put
for.
all of his skill points into piloting is now
Right.
like, oh, right.
I'd like to
So
pilot this
I'm
horse.
useless. Thanks.
Oh,
But yeah.
so
Yeah. No, if the players know that,
yeah.
you can do that for a few episodes.
So you got another one.
I've got bounty hunting because
Yeah,
that's how the Mandalorians. I mean, the
sure.
Mandalorian starts as the bounty hunter, and then very quickly became asked to go and collect a person. And it goes back to the thing we did earlier, where the Mandalorian finds the baby Yoda and then goes, "Well, let's give him up." He gives him up, but then he feels bad, and then that sets off what will be, as of next week, 3 series of crazy Star Wars stuff, which doesn't
And this, you know
involve
what?
any. I was going to say it doesn't involve Skywalkers, but that's not true. Spoilers.
This is
Damn
a
it!
good
Damn you,
point, though.
Luke.
I'm tired of them. Tired of that family. This is actually a Bounty Hunters and the Mandalorian is a really great example because it involves a couple of these things, or has elements of them. But something else that it does, that if you're going to run a longer campaign, if you're going to turn this into like a story arc or a campaign, it does a brilliant job of character development as related to these, frankly, really like almost cliched plots. I mean, here's something here. I'll huck this at you, and maybe you, if you want to listen to the episode, I'll send you the link when it publishes. But did a podcast for work in which one of our faculty talked about the place of the Western, like the Western as a literary or film property in American culture, like what it represents and what it reflects. And he made a very clear point that the Mandalorian's packaged as a Western. It's just a Western. Yeah. That's it. And then all of and when you find the different stories and the things that Mandalorian gets involved in, all of those things have been done ad nauseum in Western films over the last 70, 80 years. So that there, I think in that though, go ahead.
I was going to say, Star Wars to some extent is a space Western. I mean, totally. Still not to the extent you want to see space with Firefly and Serenity. Those are super. I mean, they fly around on horses.
They attack a train.
And, yeah, they literally those are even more Western. But yeah, the Mandalorian clearly. I mean, like that's the whole thing. We don't see it in fantasy a lot. We don't. Okay, the idea that might be a wanted poster, but that isn't something that people tend to do in fantasy compared to obviously in westerns. That's a classic thing. There's a wanted poster, you go and track it down. But that's a thing that we then expect to see more in sci-fi, despite the fact having between Boba Fett and Mandalorian, who are both bounty hunters, doing very little bounty hunting.
Right.
But
yeah, that's it. And you know what? The bounty hunt,
bounty hunting plays.
The bounty hunt is, in a way, it's like the cargo carrying mission in reverse.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to go retrieve something. Now, the bounty hunt could also be a thing. So you could call this like a retrieval mission, of which a bounty hunt for an individual is that. And obviously, again, you just play it straight.
I mean, that's what I think. Yeah, bounty hunting is like you can literally do. I mean, like I know if I play Star Wars again at any time soon, I would quite happily have both the players, right? You're bounty hunters.
Yeah.
Because that's their job. So you give them a bounty, but the bounty can be different because, they've got to find the person. I still don't understand how it works in Star Wars because they seem to be able to get very close to the person with very little effort, but then it requires effort. And I'm like, is this some kind of GPS thing
Don't
on their
scrape. You know what?
genetic? You
Honestly,
never understand it.
the vast majority of Star Wars plots do not scrape too much.
Yeah.
The paint is quite
But you know,
thin.
you've got to find the person. So that can be a lot of, you know, a mixture of technology and meeting people and talking and following leads. And
Yep.
then then when you get there, you have to track the person, and then maybe there's a fight, and that's when you have the whole, you know, they're with a gang, and so you've got to fight
Yeah.
gang, and then you are on the carrying person in the cargo thing, where then we're back to the other thing we said of carrying people, which means you can do a lot of different things. Some of them can just be straight, you find the person, you take them back.
Yeah.
You find the person, and then they're wrongfully wanted because it's just actually someone put a bounty out on, you know, their brother because they didn't pay their bar tab or something stupid. You know, so there's I think bounty hunt is one way I feel I could run not a long campaign, a decent length campaign. Certainly there would be more bounty hunting in my bounty hunter campaign than there was certainly than in flipping Boba Fett. None.
You know, though, there could be
the Mandalorian has bits.
The nice thing about a bounty hunt, like a very traditional played straight bounty hunting, the assumption of that being like there's the foundation of the story. There are plenty of on ramps to character development, and plenty, because of the travel involved and the interaction with different individuals and groups, there's plenty of on ramps, whatever. There are plenty of ways to steer the story in another direction that could also involve a lot of character development. And again, Mandalorian's a perfect example of that. But I'm going to call it retrieval because it could be a thing.
Yeah,
it could be a thing. I like your next one too. It's so classic. It's perfect.
I can't remember what they actually refer to it as in Aliens, but in Aliens they just go, oh, yeah, is this just another bug hunt? And it's like,
it says there is a xenomorph involved. Okay, it's just another bug hunt.
It always makes me want to know, what have they previously hunted?
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine that the xenomorphs in the Aliens films are the scariest monster. There must be scarier, worse things than that out there. Bigger.
I don't think so. I think the xenomorphs are presented as the apex threat, but it's clear that there are other beasties.
Yeah.
Because of that very short exchange on the flight deck of the Sulaco in Aliens. Absolutely. But yeah, bug hunt.
Can't we just get a Colonial Marines TV show where the Marines are just dropped on different planets doing
Colonial Marine stuff?
Putting down uprisings, or I don't know, doing training, whatever. We don't know what they do. We get one Aliens film where they all, well, spoilers, but you know, the film came out in the 80s, so tough.
Yeah. If you haven't
they all die. They all die, and the one who doesn't dies at the start of the next film. So, you know.
But that film doesn't exist. Remember that. Remember where we stop. A bug hunt is. And here's the neat thing about a bug hunt is that a bug hunt could be something that your characters are sent to go deal with, or something that happens where they are.
Yeah,
and it could be something with a really significant threat, a la Alien or Aliens, or it could be something that is what in Star Trek Adventures they'd call a B plot, which is that other plot that runs. There was an episode of Deep Space Nine. I think there may have been a few where these things were mentioned. There was these things called Cardassian voles. They were some kind of they were like a rodent of unusual size in space or something like that. They were big rodents on Deep Space Nine that Miles O'Brien was complaining about because they were like chewing on wires or something like that. So there was an episode I remember where the havoc they were wreaking played more prominently, but I think they were mentioned on a number of occasions. So it could be a bug hunt doesn't have to be like Alien. A bug hunt could be something a little less awful, but could cause problems.
Yeah, I mean, look at Starship. Starship Troopers is one long, drawn out, slightly weird political bug hunt.
Yeah,
because that's what they're doing. The bugs supposedly aren't intelligent, and there's a lot of them to kill. And you know, they can kill you back.
Yep.
But that's why you have grunts with you.
I mean, there are plenty of things you could do with that, obviously. And again, play it straight, or I mean, Alien is a bug hunt with a twist sitting right under the surface. That there's this, you know, this company that's behind you. How much do they know, and how much are they to blame, and this and that, the other thing. So you could throw in twists like that, or you could just again play it straight. It's a bug, it's a thing, and it's eating people, or it's spraying goo all over the place, or it's devouring wires, and the spaceships don't work. And again, it could be at a location or it could be on a ship itself, like you're out in moving from place to place. And again, maybe the maybe this becomes the B plot that takes over for the A plot on your exploration thing. Like you go to a place to explore it, and then you get a stowaway in the form of some goo or something like that. Then on the way back creates all kinds of problems. And then there's your lead in to the next adventure that articulates well, that is connected to that which you just finished. So they're not episodes, they're chapters in the same extended story.
But there you go. You got any you want to add to this?
You know what? One of a sort, and it actually harkens back to a Western trope, is the call it like the defense or the protection. You know, where like
Yeah, yeah.
you're in a
You turn up
place
in the
that,
town and someone's going to come
yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah, yeah. El Guapo shows up, and you're the three amigos or something like that.
That's exactly what I thought of first. I didn't think of the proper ones, like the Magnificent Seven and the other ones. That was the one
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
thought of first, was the Three Amigos.
Yep.
Uh,
But yeah, I mean that's a great one. You could have the and there's a Serenity episode where
there
they're
is a
they're like
Firefly episode
protecting
for
that brothel.
exactly that. Yeah,
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 I mean there are plenty of examples of that. And again, you can play it straight, or you could play it with like a in 300 with the mutant trader dude. Where you have maybe
yeah.
there's someone on the inside who is, it's, again, all of these. I think the great way to approach these is, okay, how would this function if I just ran it straight? How would it function if I threw a twist in? And what kind, to what extent do I want that twist? But yeah, call it the defense or protection story. Either you're called to a place to protect it, or where you are, you're the heroes. Sorry, you're it. You're the annual heroes. You drew your lots. Now you have to deal with it.
I think definitely. I mean, one thing I would say, if you are lacking inspiration sci-fi, there's so much good sci-fi out there, which is easy to get an idea from.
Yeah,
Not necessarily films, but just TV shows. Like we have however many different
sure.
versions of Star Trek there are. And Star Trek might not be the right flavor you want, but there's ideas in there that you can apply to other. But certainly, like Firefly is just absolute gold for running
Brilliant.
this kind of stuff.
The Expanse.
The Expanse, the one downside of the Expanse is very good at like a long form, big campaign, but it's you can tell it's based on a book. It's got a long interweaving story. The Expanse isn't doing like a story of the week kind of thing that Star Trek was very good at.
But you could extract those from it.
Yes.
Like the attack on Ganymede. That becomes something
Just that's
like that's a
if
distress
you're interested
call.
if you're interested in sci-fi, you watch The Expanse. It's great sci-fi, storytelling.
Firefly,
and
Star Trek.
It looks good. Firefly's amazing.
Obviously,
the downside of Star
Wars.
Trek is you go back and watch the old Star, and even watching Next Generation now, it's like, oh, this looks old.
Yeah,
it looks really old.
And
Deep Space Nine's better.
I'm a fan. I've heard good things, and don't tell me if you've seen any of it, but I've heard some folks say that Picard season 3, I've watched none of Picard, but that which I've read about season 1, and then to a lesser extent season 2, it just, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of everything has to be morally ambiguous. Everything's gray. Everything at its core is kind of rotten. I'm not a big fan of that as like it feels like that's like we're in that fictional moment right now where like everything's just kind of rotten. I don't like that. So I would stick with
the first series Picard. I absolutely loved. It was great, and I didn't feel like it. I thought it was. It felt like it was reasonably clear who the good guys and the bad guys kind of thing was. Season 2 started okay, then very quickly tried to go into this. Oh, we got to do shaded grey. Before, sorry, spoilers, but it's a while back. They traveled back in the past and basically did Star Trek episode. What's the one? Voyage Home? Is that the 4?
With the whales? Yeah.
They basically did they did Star Trek 4 for the series. And it was just like
But so back. So we have I'd say the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Strange New Worlds, big time. I would put forth. I would put forth the original 3 Star Wars movies. I would put forward the Clone Wars cartoon series, like you said, Firefly, Starship Troopers as a book. Avoid any of the movies. Save yourself.
I love that the first film is great, but anything else after that is terrible. The first one is good.
At what?
Well, because it picks out some of the bits, but it throws them in as like little things that you've got to look for. But it's a lot of fun. It's big, silly fun, while bizarrely sending the whole empire up as basically space Nazis, which is a bit like.
Read the book.
But actually, the Stargate TV series was very, very good. That despite a lot of people haven't watched it, that has a lot of, they go, okay, they're not using ships, they're using portals until later series. But that has a lot of really good stuff of, going to another planet and they find, and then there's different things happening when they get there, which again, a lot of them are tropes taken from other things.
I think those.
I really like, they did a series which they canceled called, I think it was called Stargate Universe, where it was like we'd taken all this technology and built a spaceship and then like went wrong, and then we're in a portal the other side. Actually, that had some interest stuff. There's a lot of good sci-fi out there. Killjoys. Watch Killjoys. Killjoys is amazing.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff.
Yeah, there's lots of good sci-fi out there to watch.
Here's what I'm going to request. And as always, I'll put a link in the notes to our Discord. If you've got ideas of series, or shows, either short runner or longer, or movies, science fiction that you think would be good places for people to turn, jump on board and give us some ideas. Also, books. So we're not going to hit that now because there are so many. But yeah, books as well, to throw at people. I think not literally, but that would be a good and useful thing. So cool. Which one? What do you want to do next? What genre? What do you think?
I think next time we should pick a game, because then we can keep between our 2D20 and non-2D20. So, like, unless we think of something, because obviously if something else comes up.
Do we want to ask people to weigh in? With the limiter that obviously we're going to do what we want to do?
We can do. The problem is that by the time this comes out, we will already have recorded some episodes. Probably
never mind then.
So that's any problem. But yes, people can suggest future things.
Okay. So do that. If you've got ideas for either games that you want ideas for, or genres, jump on and on the Discord and share.
Because we don't have to stick to 2D20, but no. I think we should. Although I suspect we will do with the 2D20 outside of like Star Trek because it's easy, and we could do Conan in Infinity, because I think there's stuff there we can do them.
I vote for Achtung Cthulhu.
Yes, I think we can do that, because I did say I did make a criticism of it that it doesn't explicitly give you very many good adventure ideas in it, and unfortunately, as much as like. This will be mostly you, because when I come to like do anything with Cthulhu, it's like, right, there's these Cthulhu cultists and they're going to do a ritual, and the beast thing's going to come through and you have to stop it. And that's pretty much where I end. But like, now the Nazis. So
we're going to do an episode about story ideas, seeds for Achtung Cthulhu. Perfect.
Yes.
All right. I think we did our job for the day. Thank you so much for listening. You can visit our show's homepage at anchor.fm/fluffncrunch. That's FLUFFNCRUNCH. We would really appreciate feedback and reviews on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to this on. Thanks so much.